But what happens is another one of my mates out there, Scott Haywood, how are you? Scott is a big Rush fan, and he's sent me some stuff, some excerpts from 2112 that he wants me to do, and I'm doing that this weekend. We've got a little thing called the One Take Charlie. So what happens is Scott will send me some beautiful Leo Kottke stuff. I'll butcher it with some drums, and we put it all together. And so he sends me a bit, I put a bit on it, and then we put it out, and there you go. So there's a couple of bits up there, but we've gone a little bit Rush in dedication, and that's that. But I'm going to get into some technique stuff, because I'm doing a lot of talking behind this drum kit, which, of course, has an influence with people like Terry Bozzio, all that, the melodic prog drummers, Barry Barlow from Jethro Tull, Doane Perry, who was of Jethro Tull, the drummer for Jethro Tull right up until about 2012, who was a great friend of Neil Peart, and you can see them together on YouTube. I think it was thedrumchannel.com and all that sort of stuff. Brilliant stuff, beautiful people. And so what happens is with prog rock, you've got to be melodic, right? So this is one of the reasons why I've got this on this side. Okay, so there you go. And there's all that sort of stuff. But what goes on... Now what I've got is there's this on the left. Now, Neil Peart had a wraparound drum kit, right? With a revolving stage, all that sort of stuff. And what it was when Rush got into the 80s with albums like Power Windows and Hold Your Fire and all those albums, there was a lot of electronics happening. And with that, what goes on is that he did a lot of electronic drums. So, imagine this being a semicircle, okay? And then when they went to those albums from that era, basically the stage would turn around, he'd turn around, like that, and play the electronic side, sort of thing. Now, to explain some of the things that he would do during these kinds of things, I'm going to start off by giving you a couple of technical things, okay? Just to latch onto and hold on to. Some of his signature licks and all this sort of stuff. And sounds, funnily enough. Now, the first thing, and back to Scott, you asked me about hi-hats. Yes, Neil Peart's use of hi-hats. Really quite, he made it his own, the hi-hat kind of stuff there. Like, what would happen is just the open hi-hat, right? So, that kind of business there. Now, I'm going to give you a little thing. I've done it before. It's a bit of a John Bonham lick, and Neil Peart's great heroes were my great heroes, given that I'm only 7 years behind him, and all that as far as age. But the thing about it is John Bonham, Keith Moon, Ginger Baker. I've done shows on all three. So a lot of this is going to be conceptual continuity, to quote Frank Zappa, right? And Terry Bozzio did a wonderful tribute to him, saying I first saw Neil Peart when Terry Bozzio was in the last incarnation of The Mothers with Frank Zappa in 1975, and Rush supported Frank Zappa. So everything's like that, you see. And same with the techniques and all this sort of stuff. So this is something I want you to hold on to throughout this face chook dedication. I'm going to start with I'm talking about the hi-hat, but let me get there. I'm going to start with the single stroke roll. Then I'm going to put the hi-hat on every right hand, right? What that does is every time, therefore, I put a left hand on the hi-hat, it's going to be open. See, there it is there. See? And then you shoulder it, put a bass drum to it, that kind of stuff there. So you get that. Oh, drop me book. Oh. there it is there. I put that, where am I going to put that? I'll put it back where it was because I'm going to do some stuff for you. So that's the first thing, right? That hi-hat thing. So what starts to happen is that with your feet, it's like a little right-left. You see? And then you put it in. What am I going? Yeah, anyway, there it is there. So there's that, hi-hats, okay? You'll hear that almost everywhere. It's almost a signature thing for Neil Peart. And that's what happens there. Now, when we're doing a roll, he's big for the long rolls going down and all this sort of stuff. So, you've got your typical roll going down. This is the second thing I want you to look out for. Fine, okay. But then he puts notes inside notes, right? I've got a little exercise for you. This is something I've got in my second grade drum set manual. I'm going to take the snares off with this. Notes within notes, okay? So what happens is, essentially, before I start, I'll start with the single stroke roll again. Now, you have things called measured rolls. So if we're going to do, let's say, a 5-stroke roll, which is right, right, left, left, right, so you might have... and then that quickly turns into a paradiddle-diddle. You see him do that a lot, a paradiddle-diddle. And it's right, left, right, right, left, left. So that kind of thing. But depending on how you do the sticking, it can also be called a 6-stroke roll as well. So right, left, left, right, right, left, right, left. It sort of comes in together. I might put that back on, you know. So what happens is this. So I'm going to give you a little exercise. You can also, oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. You can also do that as a rough. Now, what a rough is when you do that same thing, but with single strokes. That kind of thing there. Ah! Which is usually pretty good when you're dealing with floor toms and things like that, because you've got to do a bit of work. When you're on a snare drum, double stroke rolls are fair enough. You know, they're going okay. There's a lot of bounce on a snare drum, you know, that kind of thing. But when you get down to the floor toms, bigger skin, tuned lower and all that, the stick stays in the skin a bit. So sometimes roughs are better. But I still like doing double stroke rolls there. But this is the little exercise that I like to do a lot. I will take those off. I'm going to do 6 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So it's snare, call it a high, or you know, you know what I mean. 5-piece kit inside the monolith here. Inside Doris. It's almost like an arpeggio. Double. Double. Now build it up a bit. Got that? So it's just 6, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did that just the other week. Once again, I'm big on continuity. All that sort of stuff. Now, that is going to be an in to some of the... that kind of thing there. Now, one of the things, let me just cover some of the signature sounds, right? Now, Neil Peart's famous for the open hi-hat stuff. That kind of stuff there. And then those fills. And then bell of the cymbal. That kind of stuff there. Now